So I've made a selection of 4 projects that I want to share with you today. And I think they are all rather evocative in their nature. And yeah, I think one could describe them as invitations to reflect on how we perceive our environment. So the first project I want to share with you is a project that I did in Japan. And in the spring of 2011, I was invited to take part in an exhibition to make a temporary garden in Nagasaki. And yeah, when I read the brief, I didn't really know what to make out of this task, because they asked for a very small garden, so 15 square meters, for the amount of 10 days. So I was really questioning how temporary can a garden still be without losing its meaning. And next to that, they had also sent the designers a list with plans. So we could make a choice in between some geraniums and this kind of annuals. And so I really got the feeling, yeah, it is a bit like moving a few plants from the nursery next to the exhibition ground for 10 days and having them there. And somehow I found it very difficult to find the arguments for myself how this garden could make sense. But on the other hand, I really wanted to do something in Japan. I think it's a country that I find very inspiring, and that I really admired all the craftsmanship, especially if you look at all the tools and these kind of old objects. And the organization had also given us a theme, which made it even more difficult. And the theme was world peace. So in a way, it's a very heavy theme, but to give you vision on that as a designer, it can be very kitsch. So I was close to not do it, but I thought, well, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it with my whole heart. And I decided to actually fold the whole garden out of white paper. So in a way, my answer was to do something that, a garden that could actually not live longer than 10 days. So that's in a way, the garden is more fake than a real garden with plants, but maybe it is also more true to their original brief. And I also found important that it was an installation that you could never make alone. So in the time given, you would have to build it together with other people. And they should be beautiful, but the beauty would come out of the fragility. So this is the plan of the garden. So about 600 flowers, 600 stems, and 1,800 leaves. And of course, this fascination also comes from this heritage that they have in Japan. Paper is a very important material in the daily life, but also as a material in the construction. And they also have, for example, have these wish trees, which I always found very, very fascinating, because from a distance it looks like a very a whole object, no, in the sense that it has a singular expression. But from close by, you see that they are actually all little notes that people buy at temples. They are kind of little sentences that kind of fortune-telling sentences, and they have a tradition to hang them in the trees afterwards. So in a way, I really like this, the fact that this is made by many different people from all sorts of cultural backgrounds, ages, but at the end, the expression is a very singular object. And the same is with those ribbons, which from distance they really look just like kind of ribbon. But if you look very close, there are thousands of those crane birds that are folded together. And there they have it comes from an old legend that you are granted a wish if you fold 1,000 of those birds. So it doesn't mean that the wish comes true, but you are allowed to make it. So I thought that it could be a nice way to follow on this tradition to really fold an entire garden, and by doing so expressing also a wish for peace, maybe. And then we were given a deadline to make all the construction drawings. So, I mean, I made this kind of drawings, and in a way, the flower head is based on it's a very traditional Japanese fold of a lily. So, and that is only for the flower, but I made the same drawings for the stems and all the leaves. And they're all varying a little bit in height, so to mimic the way a wild flower garden would move and look, and also varying the size of the flower slightly, but always working with the same folds. And I made these life-size studies in my studio. And then I had a whole package which I sent to them. And then they called me 2 days later. And they said, yeah, we like your plan, but we expected a garden with real flowers. And do you think you could make a new design? Because the visitors want to see real flowers. So of course this whole issue started for me again. It was a bit difficult to tell them that I really questioned their brief, but and of course it's difficult to say no to a Japanese person. So we were talking quite a lot, and then at the end they were saying things that I understood there was something else going on. So there was a story about medals. And so I didn't even notice that somewhere in the brief, but apparently after the different gardens will be built, a jury would go by and hand out medals to the designers. And they would do that according to a list of criteria. And one of these criteria was the plants, the planting plan. And they said, you will get 0 points for this criteria if you do this garden, and this would not be fair. But then I said, I really want to come to Japan, and I want to make that with local people, and I don't need forget about the medal. I don't need it. It's fine. So I really had to write that down, and then they let me do it. But I had really imagined that I would go there and fold the flowers myself, and hopefully, with the help of people there. But they had organized everything, so they had teamed each designer with a contractor. But these contractors, they were contractors used to work with real soil and real plants. So my contractor, which is the man in pink, was really wondering what kind of sin he had done to deserve to fold. Oh. But actually it was really beautiful, because they so he of course he went to look for how we could do this, and at the end we collaborated with the institute where people are, and that they have suffered either an injury or a severe depression, and they try to get back in society by doing usually quite repetitive or meditative work. So it was an extremely beautiful collaboration with these people there. and they were really laughing a lot. So somehow we really couldn't communicate really by language, but it was really nice. And then I think when I realized when I took this photo, that on that day they were also working with some glue, and I think somehow the glue had some effect on them. And the paper was really a real paper, so it was not with a coating. It was a kind of paper that could actually could stand moisture for maybe a month without falling apart. But it really could have the fold of a real paper. So, and it was losing, of course, its fold with moisture in the air. So, just before the opening, it started to rain. So, in a way, it is also the idea of the garden, that it is this fragility you want to. That is for me where the tension is. That you see the amount of work, and somehow it has this, this very, very short lifespan. But of course, I really found it a pity that it would immediately lose its shape before the opening. And so the people there really immediately put up a tent, but still the moisture was in the air, so they started to unfold. And I was like, oh, everybody's been working so hard, and of course, what do you want? You want to make a garden out of paper outside? And somehow it is always a bit this tension, I think, in a lot of my works, to try to manipulate nature, or to show in a way that the absurdity of that, but also the beauty. I cannot decide what it is, and for me that is a question that is reoccurring constantly. And of course you also have then these moments of magic, because the day of the opening it was very sunny, and then they folded back. So like a real flower in a way. And they were really moving in the wind, attracting a lot of dragonflies. So the photographer was really, ooh. But it was quite. And this is a project that I made in Canada, which is part of also a festival that they have there called the Jardin de Métis. And it's located on a beautiful area, quite wild, with a lot of nature. That has a lot of presence. And they have an estate there, so which has been handed over from generations to generations, and the owner has decided to have part of this estate dedicated to a garden festival. So every year they invite new designs to make an installation that sometimes stays several years as well, in openings that they have in the woodland. But somehow when I went there, I thought that the landscape is in a way so powerful, and so when I walk in this woodland, every tree and every fern and every rock is already in a kind of way an art form for me. In a way, I always try to look at these with fresh eyes and never to forget how that they are quite fascinating phenomenon. But of course, when you are there, always in those surroundings, what is part of your daily life becomes a banality. It's difficult to have it in another way. and yet I didn't feel like adding anything. Somehow I thought, yeah, I can make an autonomous piece in an opening in a woodland, but again, I think a bit like the Japanese garden, I found it difficult to motivate that. So in a way, I almost didn't want to do anything. But how do you do nothing? In a way, if you ask to do something, it's difficult not to do anything. But I think I just wanted to share that perception somehow, that way of walking around and looking at the surrounding nature with this fresh view. So I decided to design everything except what would be on show. So I made a museum room around a little piece of nature in the woodland. So from the outside, it's a kind of absorption of space. In a way, it has this black tar paper, so very rough in a way. It also reminds a bit of the old wooden houses that you have in this environment as well. But in a way, it's also not at all about the outside. So it really is the inside that is space, and everything was really done like in a real building. So really putting all the effort in making the stucco perfect and the plinths and everything you actually won't look at. And in a way, it is quite simple. It's a simple gesture, but yet it does really work. I mean, people were entering there, and I stayed a few days after the opening, and they can really look at the tree or the fern as if they had never seen one before, and I find that really, really touching somehow. That what is part of your daily environment can still be so touching, but sometimes you need to frame it or to show it or to change its context to be reminded of that. This is a project that I'm still busy with at the moment. It's a bench for a lane that used to be part of the hunting grounds of the royal family in the Netherlands. And out of this lane, or the hunting grounds, there's nothing left nowadays, only the lane. And now there's a housing area around it. But the lane still has quite monumental trees. And for the bench, I decided that I didn't want to make something figurative, but more to have an intuitive approach and make something evocative that would more intuitively connect with the feeling, maybe a more personal feeling of what these hunting grounds were for me. And I had then to think a bit about this kind of, the mood in those images. And this is the lane, I don't know, I would say maybe 100 years ago. So it's now that there were fields, there are fields. Before it used to be more woodland, and now it's a housing area. So I started by making a drawing or a series of drawings where I would connect the 6 points that are crucial for bench. So the lines always have to come back to this 6 points. So here, and there. And that is for the back and the seat and the legs. But for the rest, somehow the form would follow the hand. So I would just draw with a pencil and accept the lines as they are. So accept the spontaneity of the drawing as beautiful. And out of this drawing, then I pulled the drawing apart and made 10 different supports. So the bench is then 10 meters long, and all the supports would be made out of bronze. And the idea was then to further design those supports, to use the same method, the same intuitive process as the hand drawing, so as the 2D. So the third dimension would be done in the same way as the 2D. And so what I mean with that is that we would have the casting sand frames, where you would usually cast the bronze in, and that I would carve them out directly in there, so without making a positive model first. So in a way, without knowing exactly what would come out of it. So I would start by only tracing the outline of the hand drawing and mirroring that, and then carving it out in order to also get this spontaneous relief. And then casting it, and then see what comes out. So then this was done in real. So this is a casting sand block. And somehow when I'm busy at the foundry, I also find it very inspiring to discover the materials that they have there. So, like for example, the casting sand, I find that really a very interesting material, because it has in a way the right resistance to carve in, because it's mixed with the resin, and it also oxidates, so the colors are changing all the time. But anyway, we made them this. This is one of the hand drawings, and then we traced the contour, and then carved them out. So first with a little drill, and then with spatulas that I used usually in the ceramics. So the way you also have these shiftings in the scales, that they almost start to look like a model for a landscape or a river. And then it was, of course, very interesting to see if the two casts would come back together. If it would be possible to make a cast. So this is one of the bronze supports that come out. And now we made a prototype of with 3 supports. So. And so this is a prototype to see how it behaves, and then we are now in the process of making the long one, 10 meter long, and the seat is out of wood, also without a coating. So it's a black bamboo, which is the species is very dark, so you actually don't need to coat it, which I think is also very true to the use of bronze, which also is without a coating. This is also a project that I'm still busy with at the moment. It's the National Pavilion of the Kingdom of Bahrain that I designed together with Anouk. And it's for the World Expo in Milan that is opening soon in May. And it has a theme. The world is the food industry. And somehow Bahrain has this. It's a fascinating country in the sense that it really used to be known as an oasis. At least the northern part of the island was very green, and they were really exporting vegetables and fruits to the entire Middle East. But then in the 30s, they discovered that they also had oil. So this made a big change in the industry. So most farmers changed to go and work in the oil industry, and the country became richer, and then they were importing all the fruits and vegetables. And of course, this shift in the industry also had consequences for how the country looks. So it became more and more desert-like. And this has also to do with the fact that they reclaimed a lot of land, and by also doing the drillings for the oil, disturbed the ground. So in a way, salt water entered the fresh water sources that the island was very rich in. And somehow this is an irreversible damage to the ground water. They have some sources left, and the island is becoming more and more aware of this issue, and they don't have any petrol anymore, so they are really trying to find another way to have another something else to export. And in a way, there's also very little relationship in between the built environment and the landscape there. So things are really juxtaposed in a way that often is difficult to read. And we were both very fascinated by this picture, which is from an old temple, ruins, and especially by this bent piece, and the way the stones are put together and not completely fitting. Somehow it has this very primitive geometry, which we also liked a lot about the work of Ellsworth Kelly. So somehow they are this kind of language, this formal language. We wanted to do something with that. And of course it is also starting to work in a quite intuitive or personal way, following more a feeling of shapes that evoke something or can make an intuitive connection with another place or another culture without forcing it. Huh? So it's still a very open language. Like the bench, you could say it's also an open language. And so, because in the master plan for the expo in Milan, in a way, there is not really a context. All the pavilions are situated one after the other, next to each other, and you don't really have anything to react to in such a environment. So we started by making a drawing. So we made a drawing for Bahrein. Based on these geometries that were fascinating to us. And somehow afterwards, we found links with local elements. So it's collaboration in between two disciplines, the architect and the landscape architect, starting together from scratch. So it's not first an architect making a building and then calling a landscape architect to fill in the green in between, but really starting from zero and coming up with a concept together. So one of us made this drawing and the other one read it, so interpreted the drawing in a spatial way. And it became a landscape of intertwining gardens and closed exhibition spaces. And we made this model entirely poured in plaster. And you can see with the vegetation. And so for the gardens, the concept was to reuse elements of the agricultural heritage from Bahrain, but only fruit trees. So it's a landscape of fruit trees, 10 species that somehow create a landscape together. So in a way, they are not arranged like you would in a cultivation, but they are arranged in a way that is maybe more evoking a pleasure garden, which this would also be, but it's a reminder of it's making a link with the past and somehow also, saying something about maybe a possible future, how building and landscape can have a closer connection. This is the drawing of the gardens. And so, a large part of it is already built. You can see this was at the start. The drawing is appearing, and in a way, the real building was built with like the model. Really a stacking of concrete elements. And this is the trees in the nursery, in the shade hall. And, so every tree is labeled with a number and has a very precise location in the plan. You can see how the drawing is coming about. So it's also, of course, in the ceiling and on the walls. You can really follow it. And in a way, logistically, it's a complicated process because these plants are all tropical or from a Mediterranean climate, so they cannot be outside in the climate of Milan in the winter. So we really have to push the planning up until the opening. And that meant that we didn't have time in such a short time before the opening to also bring the earth at the same time because it's on a concrete foundation. So that's why also all the trees have to have a specific location beforehand. So I went to all these nurseries and tagged them all, and somehow I know exactly which each plant is and how it's branched, so that it falls, so that they can fall into each other. And so we had to bring the earth beforehand in January and place bigger pots there, where the trees immediately have to be planted in when they arrive. Yes, this was my last slide.